My sister and I grew up in a restaurant. It wasn't really a choice. Dad was a workaholic who spent more time at work than at home, and Mom left us when we were babies. They got divorced precisely because Dad only cared about his job. Sometimes I wished Mom had taken us with her. All throughout our childhood, my sister Carrie and I felt closer to the restaurant staff than we did our dad. The customers adored us. Every time the restaurant was busy, Dad would make us wear aprons and serve the guests. They loved seeing us in our cute outfits as we took the food out of the kitchen and put the plates on their tables. I gotta admit, whenever Carrie and I saw happy families dining out and having fun, we would wish that we had something like that. As we grew older, though, Dad became more and more focused on one thing alone, his restaurant. He was determined to make it into a success, but he wasn't doing it for us. He made it very clear that neither of us would get to inherit the restaurant. Even though sometimes we had to miss school just to help out at his business, when Carrie and I started high school, Dad sat us down for a talk, and I knew it was not going to be good news. Dad never sat down to have dinner with us.
So, you're going to your Aunt Hilda's for the weekend. I just have some business to attend to.
It wasn't a question. He was ordering us to go away, and he knew how much Aunt Hilda disliked us. She was always jealous of the fact that Dad got rich and he never helped her when her husband left her. Nevertheless, we went along with his plan. We didn't have a choice anyway. Those 2 days at Aunt Hilda's house were more than enough for a lifetime. She blamed us for every little thing that went wrong, but as Sunday ended, we were more than happy that we got to go home. Except when we got out of the car, there was no home to go back to. Aunt Hilda zoomed out of there before we could even say goodbye to her, and we slowly realized what had happened. There was a sign on the lawn, and it said, "For sale." We knocked, we rang the doorbell, but there was no answer. When we peeked inside, all our things were gone. Our rooms had been emptied, too. We circled around, desperate to find some sort of clue, hoping against hope that what was happening was just a joke. But when we got into the backyard and looked at the porch, we saw a pair of bags there with our names on them. He left us nothing but a few clothes to survive, and there was an envelope with a few $100 in it. Carrie started to cry. He left us, Jack. First Mom, and now Dad's left us. Shh, don't cry. I'm here. We'll figure it out. Let's go to the restaurant. But as soon as we got onto the same street where Dad's restaurant was, the manager rushed out of the place to meet us. He was panicking. He had fear in his eyes.
Kids, I'm so sorry, but you gotta get out of here. He's not in the best mood, and if he finds out that I let you come near the restaurant, I'll lose my job.
He was about to cry. He was so scared that I could see his hands trembling. It was something Dad would do. I realized that Joe could lose his job because of us, probably all the waiters too. And I knew their families. I didn't want them to suffer. So Carrie and I left there. The manager, Joe, told us what happened. Dad had been in debt for a long time, and he was desperate not to let his restaurant sink. So when we were at Aunt Hilda's, he sold our house. He also got rid of us, so he would no longer have to pay for our school and feed us. He moved into the restaurant's second floor, and he fired half the staff just so he could keep the place afloat. I couldn't forgive him for what he did. I wanted to go to the cops. I wanted him in jail. I wanted him to suffer. But at that moment, I knew I had to put Carrie first. We only had each other, and I had to make sure I took care of my sister. We bounced from shelter to shelter. We tried to find jobs, but nobody wanted to hire 2 homeless kids. And then, one day as we were wandering the streets, I heard Carrie's stomach grumble from hunger. There were a bunch of stalls in one of the back streets, and they were selling street food. I checked my pocket and found our last coins. Carrie looked at me and shook her head. "No, I'm fine, I swear." I ignored her and walked up to the woman who was selling skewers. She was busy fanning the coals, and the smell of the food made my mouth water. Hi, ma'am. Can we have 2 skewers, please?" The woman smiled at us.
Chicken, beef, or pork?"
Whatever's the cheapest, please."
"Well, chicken it is."
The lady showed us where to sit. She put up 2 chicken skewers that looked like they came down from heaven. They were huge chunks and glistened with some sort of sticky sweet sauce. As she cooked them over the coals, the smell was so overwhelming. I could hear my stomach groaning from anticipation. She came over to our table and put down the skewers in front of us. She also brought about 5 different sauces for us to dip them in.
Well, you enjoy now.
And we did. It was only a small meal, but we savored it like it was a buffet sent from heaven. I had never tasted anything like it in my life. And when we finished, I felt like I never wanted to eat anything else ever again. I thanked the kind lady and prepared to pay her for the meal.
That'll be $2 per skewer, so $4 in total.
I reached into my pocket and plunked all the coins I had onto the table. They were all pennies and dimes. I counted them out. I knew I had at least $5 in there. And as I counted, the lady's face grew sadder and sadder. I counted out the last penny I had, and all we had was $3.75. I grew red in the face. I was so embarrassed, and Carrie began to panic. I looked up at the lady and apologized. Her eyes were brimming with tears. I'm sorry, ma'am, but this is all we have. I really thought we had more. I'm really, really sorry.
If you like, we can come back tomorrow. I promise we'll come back. We just need to work so we can pay you back.
At that, the lady began to sob beyond control. She knelt in front of us and hugged us. She had just realized that we were homeless, and she didn't notice our clothes before then.
Well, where are your parents? Do you have anywhere to stay?
We told her the story of our lives, and by the end of it, she was furious. She wanted to hunt our dad down, but we told her that we were all right, and we promised to pay her back what we owed.
Nonsense! You're not paying me back a single cent. In fact, you're not paying me at all.
She handed us back the money we gave her.
Now, sit here and wait for me.
She was gone for a few minutes, and when she came back, there was a line of people behind her carrying all sorts of food. They piled it on top of our table. They were skewers and hot dogs and rice and noodles and spring rolls and bear claws, and most heavenly pudding they called lèche flan. Carrie and I thought we'd gone to heaven. There were countless aunties who milled around, asking us about our story, asking us if we were all right. And by the end of it all, we felt like we found our real family. Those ladies took care of us. The lady with the skewer stall, who we learned was named Joanne, took us in. She, too, was abandoned. Her husband was in the Navy, and they met in her home country where they got married and had kids. She followed him here, and when she did find him, she found out that he already had a family. So she was left with nowhere else to go. All the aunties who took care of Carrie and me had similar stories. They were all immigrants who dreamed of a better life, only to be betrayed by those they loved. They were abandoned, too, just like my sister and I. And that's why they all took care of us. Joanne taught me all about her business. Most days, Carrie and I helped out at her stall. We also helped the other aunties, and over the years, we eventually started our own street food stall. We were lucky enough to become successful, and eventually, we got our own real food truck. We would buy stuff from the aunties and sell them on our truck. Then that truck multiplied and became 10. We were such a roaring success that we were everywhere on social media. We started employing the aunties to make our food, and whenever the customers asked who made the delicious treats, we would point them to the street where Joanne found us. Together, our food truck empire and Joanne and the aunties' food stalls began to grow, until one day our following demanded that we start our own restaurant. Carrie and I knew exactly what to do. We walked into our dad's restaurant with confidence. As soon as he saw us, he started shouting. Joe, the manager, was still working there, and he had fear in his eyes. He tried to stop us, but I winked at him and told him I've got it all under control.
Get out of my restaurant! Get out! You're both bad luck! It's because of you I'm struggling so much!
I just laughed. No, you're struggling because you're a bad person. And this isn't your restaurant. Not anymore. Guards?
What are you talking about? Unhand me! I'm waiting for my buyer. I'm selling this restaurant.
I just smiled at him as the guards threw him out onto the street. Your buyers are right here, Dad. You're staring right at them. Dad's face went from confusion to horror.
No, I'm not selling to you. Let me in. It's my restaurant.
Carrie and I laughed. It was sweet revenge to take away the one thing our dad cared about. We sat down, had a nice dinner, and toasted to our new restaurant's success, all to the sound of our dad's continuous begging.